coming here. My name is Mauricio Pastoriello. I'm the Communications Director from United for Care. And as I come here to Orlando, and as we've had an opportunity to travel around a little bit, after so many months already working in this campaign, I feel in a sense as if I'm going around the state visiting family. There's a lot of people, some family that I've never met, in fact, in person. For example, Jeanette here in the front row, Morgan Haas, who I speak to on the phone all the time. And I can just go down the line, speaking to you about folks that have become very dear to me over the last few months because I've had a chance to hear their stories. And in that way, they become like family. We've got Rob, whom I just met right now. Rob is an inadvertent Facebook star. He sent us a picture that was widely shared. Over 2,200 shares today, and still going strong because of his story with his daughter Megan. And that is what this campaign is really all about. Don't let anybody tell you any different. It's about the patients. It's about the people. It's about making sure that we can get the relief that people need and put within their reach a natural plant, a natural medicine that can improve their quality of life. There has been a lot of talk about all the different aspects of this amendment, of what we're trying to accomplish here in Florida, but United for Care has remained steadfast in its focus. This is about the patients, and we will continue to be about the patients. We're going to be hearing from a lot of folks this evening. We're going to be answering a lot of your questions. Some of you may have some stories that you want to share. We want to make this about almost like a family meeting, in a sense. Even those of you who may have doubts, we welcome your questions. We feel that we're in the right here. We feel that the more people know, the more support we will have for this campaign. And that's what we want to do tonight. We want to dispel any fears, any questions that anybody may have, so that you can vote with confidence on November 4th for something that will have a tremendous impact on a lot of people around the state. We thank you so much for taking the time this evening to come here and share with us this sense of family as we work through this and become more and more convinced about what is the right thing to do on November 4th, which is voting yes on Amendment 2. I'd like to begin tonight's program by introducing you to one of these members of the United for Care family. And like I said, I've only just met her now in person. We've spoken on the phone, I've seen a picture of her, I've gone to her blog. She has a really beautiful story that she'd like to share with you. Her name is Jeanette Boakland, and I don't want to characterize her story in any way. She can tell it better than anyone. But she's one of these people that has benefited from the use of medical marijuana. This is not speculation. There was an ad that came out on Friday of last week with a doctor saying there is nothing medical about this marijuana. What you're going to hear in Jeanette Boakland's own voice, there is something medical about this marijuana. And we're going to show them that on November 4th, that we know that now. That no amount of misinformation, that no amount of darkness that they can cast upon this is going to make any difference to us, because we know the truth. And we're going to hear the truth today. Starting with Jeanette's story. Jeanette, please come up and tell us about your experiences.
I wore my tall shoes so I can reach this. Can you hear me? Is that on? So my name is Jeanette Boakland, and as you may know, breast cancer hits 1 in 8 women. Lucky number 8 right here. I got diagnosed November 14th of this year, and we happen to be living in Australia. And when I got that diagnosis, we had to make the decision to come back to the States. And one of the first calls that I made to my family, I called my son and I told him what was going on and I was coming back to Florida. And he said to me, "Mom, don't you want to go back to maybe a cannabis-friendly state?" And that was the first time I had really thought about that. Just a little background. I'm a nurse by background, know enough to be dangerous with this type of thing, but it didn't make me an expert in breast health, that's for sure. I happen to work for a medical organization that does databases and has access to all the drug information. My daughter happens to work for an oncologist, and I'm telling you all this because I want you to know is I have good health insurance, I have good access to what I need, and I can think through a lot of things myself. So, as you can imagine, you know, the treatment for breast cancer is pretty barbaric. First, they cut your breasts off, then they systematically poison you for about 20 weeks, and then they try to cook you through radiation. It wasn't pretty. And I started my epic battle and did this, and lost my hair, it's come back, lost my eyelashes. But when I started this, and I was going through those first few chemos, they gave me something called dose dense, and they nicknamed it the red devil. And they, excuse me, they named it that for a reason, because it was rough. And I went through my treatments, and you know, I have good humor now, but let me tell you, it wasn't Sally Sunshine back then. By the time I had my third treatment, I thought I was done. I wasn't going to do this anymore. And I got onto Google, and I started Googling statistics and what would happen if I didn't complete my treatment, because it was awful. The constant nausea, the bone pain that comes from your body trying to rebuild its white blood counts and the medicines that they give you for that, and the general malaise and messing with your head. But anyways, some of my friends, you know, they don't know what to do for you when you tell somebody you have cancer. And everybody always says, get you a little pot if you want it. I don't know a lot about pot. Last time I smoked pot, I think it was sitting, listening to my 8-track player in my high school parking lot. And I had gotten some, and it was in a drawer in my kitchen, and I kept looking at it, and I closed the drawer. I didn't want to smoke anything. Smoking right now sounded counterintuitive, like battling for my life. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to have another friend who had some medical marijuana from Colorado. And he brought it to me, and I ate some. It was in a candy form. And I still don't know a lot about it, other than it worked. And I read the package. I saw it gave me some little directions. It said something called quad dose, if that means anything to anybody. And I ate a little bit. And what had happened was the constant nausea and discomfort that you have days on end where you cannot sleep, you cannot concentrate, you can't get comfortable, you can't watch TV, you can't eat, you can't sleep. And when this goes on for days and days, I was whining. It was beyond whining, though. And it broke my spirit, and that scared my family, my wife. My children, who said, Mom, please don't, you need to continue, and I did. But when I had that medical marijuana, it alleviated all of those symptoms. Now, I had pharmaceutical drugs to take, and what had happened was the pharmaceuticals would just make you dopey, and it did not help my state of mind. That was the last thing I needed on top of what I was going through. It made me sleep a little bit, but I was nauseous, and I was miserable. That medical marijuana, I don't want to say it was a miracle, but for me, it took me off the edge of not wanting to go on anymore because it maintained my symptoms, it managed my nausea, I could rest, and I could eat. My nutritional level was going down. When you're on chemo and you finally decide to eat, you eat like hangover food. You eat like macaroni and cheese and greasy stuff, and none of the empty calories. That's not what I needed. So that medical marijuana settled everything down. I could rest, my anxiety level went down, I could eat, and I rested. That was enough to carry me on to feel like I can do this. And I didn't feel dopey. I didn't get a buzz off of it. And it made a huge difference for me. And I am not shy at all about telling anybody my story. I guess what I did was illegal. And everybody wanted to know how I got it over from Colorado, I'll never tell you. longer speak, he typed me a message, and he said, could you get me any? And I said, I've got some left over. I only needed it during my acute periods. And I gave him what I had. And he contacted me a week later and thanked me profusely, said it really settled down his system and could I get him more? And I thought, I don't want to be the trafficking business. But what a dilemma. I have a friend who's dying of ALS and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get up in the trafficking business. It was a horrible position to be put in. I share on my different internet sites. When I talk with other women with breast cancer, I shared my stories. So some of the women have gone out and asked their children or grandkids or whatever to get them some street stuff. Well, that wasn't a good experience for everybody either. I had a 75-year-old lady told me that she sat on her kitchen floor feeling paranoid and horrible because she didn't know what she smoked. And that's not a pretty picture. That's not what people should have to go through. I feel so fortunate that I had that source for me to get me the medical marijuana, and I was able to, make the difference in my treatment. So I wanted to share my story with you today, and let you know it's real people. Amazingly, I have not developed a heroin, habit after this. but I'm very fortunate, and I just wish this fortune on everybody else to have the options that I did to make a difference for them. And I thank you for your time today. Thank you for listening to me.
And now it is my distinct privilege to introduce to you somebody who, in Orlando, certainly I don't know how far north this goes, Mr. Morgan, but being from Miami, I knew about John Morgan, but at the moment that you hit northern Florida, suddenly it seems as if those billboards are everywhere, and the radio, and it's just incredible the fame and how well known he is up here. And now he's also becoming well known for this cause, which has touched so many. And of course, it's no surprise, because he has always been for the people. My distinct pleasure to introduce to you, Mr. John Morgan.
Whenever I get in front of a bunch of people, see TV cameras and microphone, I have an irresistible urge to say, if you've been injured in an automobile accident, or on the job, or blah, 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 blah. Glad to be part of this, glad it's almost over. It started a long time ago when Ben Polera came to see me because of this polling done that he thought was favorable that Florida might be ready for this. And so he knew that I had an interest in it because of personal things in my life. My father, who had esophageal cancer and died of COPD, and my brother Tim, who I'm going to let come up here and talk for a minute. Tim and I are 2 years apart. There's another one in between us, Mike, who's a dentist up in Lake County. We all grew up in Kentucky together. There's 5 of us. We are exceedingly close, brothers and sisters, and talk to each other and email each other every single day of our lives, even as old men. And I had a grandson yesterday, so I'm tired. I was with him. But when Tim was 18 years old, I got a phone call. I was living in Brandywine Apartments up in Gainesville, Florida, and I got a phone call from my dad, and my dad was crying, and he said, Tim has been in a terrible accident, you gotta come home. So what happened, Daddy? And he said, he was a lifeguard at the Polynesian Hotel, and there was a search on for a little girl who they thought had drowned, and when he dove in, there was some tables tied down these little boats, and he hit his neck, and he was paralyzed C6, C7. And so It was, and still is to this day, the single worst day of my life. And all of you have had, or maybe not all of you, but many of you have had that type of day, which we call thunder. I call it thunderstrike. That out of the blue, from nowhere, your life has changed forever. His especially. And so, my brother Mike and I, we were roommates. We left Brandywine. We went the long way down University to St. Augustine Catholic Church. We went in and lit candles and said a prayer. We drove home. And we got to Lucerne Hospital, and he was there on a bed, spinning 360 degrees, and couldn't do anything. It's hard to say and believe that we now tell people that Tim was lucky, and the reason we say lucky is a C6, C7 quad, you don't have much hope, but he drives himself. He's worked with me for 25 years and has overseen about 300, 400 people, has been an integral part in my firm and the growth of my firm since we started it. Has a 5-year-old little girl named Taylor, lovely wife named Tiffany. He was at a father-daughter dance at St. James last Saturday. I said, how did y'all dance? He said, we practiced. You got up on my wheelchair. We had this little dance. I said, was that a problem? He goes, yeah, because all the other kids wanted to dance with me once they saw Taylor. So, you know, a lot of us have heroes. I get to have my little brother as my hero. His suffering has been immeasurable. The pain he's been through is not even describable. And his dignity has been compromised because of all he's had to go through. If you watch him get dressed in the morning, and he's the best dressed of all of us, you'll never see Tim looking like anything but $1 million. But getting dressed when you can only move through your nipples down is hard. Laying down on the bed, coat on. Tim's pain got worse and worse. His spasms got worse and worse. By the time went by, they kept prescribing more and more drugs that just had him like a zombie, and I'll let him tell you about that. He uses marijuana that he buys illegally, and if he didn't, he'd be on 7 Xanax a day. If he didn't, the pain would be unbelievable. This year has been particularly tough on him. He's been in and out of hospitals because of some of his problems. I had 2 phone calls from him. The pain was so bad, he said, John, I think I'm dying. Get that phone call. And so, he takes a piece of chocolate in the morning, and a piece of chocolate at night, and that's what he uses, and it works. And I don't know why it works, but I'm just glad it works. And so I want my brother Tim to come up here and tell you his story and our story, because we've been in it together for a long time. So I will introduce you to my hero, my brother Tim.
Brother. We always say that to each other. Nice to meet y'all. Thank you for coming tonight. My story is really threefold with marijuana. And like John says, I was injured in 1977 as a lifeguard, broke my neck. One time I was at the University of Florida. I'd smoked pot before. I think it was everybody smoked marijuana before. But it was the old Mexican gold stuff. Remember that? And it was like you gotta smoke 5 of those things to get even a buzz. So I wasn't into pot. So I came into my apartment one day and
immediately you smell this different odor. It was a totally different odor. 5 guys were smoking a joint, and I said, you know, you want to do this? And I said, no, because I'm thinking if there's 5 guys on one joint, one hit ain't gonna do nothing to that. And they go, no, you want to try this now. It's Afghani. And I go, what's Afghani? They go, don't worry about it, just smoke. So I took a hit of it. And it was instantaneous. You could feel, I had spasms and things. You could feel your body just melt. The spasms just go away. And I said, where do I get this shit? And since then I've been smoking. Then unfortunately, my father got cancer. He died. Before he died, he came to live with me. And I kept telling him, Daddy, you know, smoke pot. I don't know. He was old school. He just wouldn't do it. And finally, I had a friend that was over. We were always cooking, and he said, let me try something. So he smoked some. He had 3 plates of spaghetti that night. And he started eating, and gained a little weight, and lived longer. And because of that, it worked. And then life went on, and I had a problem with my neck. It was starting to feel hurt. And I went to the doctor for about a year, and he kept saying, it's allergies, and then finally I said, well, let's do a biopsy. So they said, okay. So if you ever get a call from the doctor, and they say, come get your cancer results at 5:30 in the afternoon, it's not good. So I get there, and they said, I said, what's wrong with me? He goes, you have cancer. And I said, what type? And he said, head and neck cancer. And I said, what are we going to do? He said, well, first of all, we're going to remove your jaw. And I said, my jaw? I said, are we going to rebuild it? He said, no. I said, he said, also, you're going to take all this out here, too. He said, sort of like Vietnam carpet bombing. They said, I said, where's the cancer? And they said, we don't know. That's why we're going to carpet bomb it. I'm like, all right. So I go home and digest that, tell John. So there was 2 places to go. We found out. I called a friend of mine out, and he had this same type of cancer. I said, Freddie, where did you go? He said, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, UPMC. And Michigan had another cancer center that did have that. So it was either Pittsburgh or Michigan. And I had relatives in Pittsburgh, so I went to Pittsburgh. And it was great. I got up there and the doctor said, you're going to be fine. So all I did was just lose just a little bit of my neck right here. And it stuck in my jaw. And they found the cancer. The cancer was on the back of my tongue. So if that doctor had taken all this out, he would have missed the cancer, and later they would have to take my tongue out. Always get a second opinion. And then I used marijuana at cancer. And as you said, you have no idea when you go through cancer, it's hell. I mean, they say chemotherapy is basically you're poisoning yourself to death. They put just enough poison in you to almost kill you, basically. That's chemotherapy. And you get sicker than hell. And the only relief you can get is marijuana. I had Maridol, I had all the other things, it didn't work. John would come over to my bed, see me throwing up, yellow shit coming out, he would look away, and I'd reach out, grab a joint, smoke a joint, and it'd go away. It works. Period. 3 times in my life, it's coming through for me. I need it, I want it, and I'll always use it. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to come to the part where we talk, where we share, where we ask, where we answer. And of course, we've got a lot of people here who are going to be able to answer your questions. We're going to be able to field your comments. And so I'm going to have this microphone, which I'm going to turn on right now. And we want to have a dialogue with you. And in order to lead that dialogue, I think it would be appropriate for Mr. Morgan to help us. And I will go out into the audience and let me know what questions you may have, what comments, what you want to share with us. That's what this is all about. Anybody? I guess, okay. I'll get to you in just a second.
When we pass it in November, John, I'm fully confident that it's going to pass. What's next?
Well, be confident that everybody votes that wants to pass it. I hope we don't get too confident that we don't know. The next phase becomes really almost as important as this phase, because then you have the enactment of the law. As you all have seen with Charlotte's Web, and by the way, there's no doubt that there would be no Charlotte's Web but for Amendment 2. We shamed the Florida legislature into at least doing that, so that the children and the people who have epilepsy have some chance. But what you saw with Charlotte's Web is the thing that I worry about when it comes to the enactment, because you saw the bastardization of the political process. They said, look, we're going to allow it, but we're only allow 5 growers in the whole state of Florida to grow it. Forget that they've never grown it before. Forget that they've, been growing philodendrons and ferns. Forget that they have no idea about it. Forget capitalism and free enterprise and the best and the brightest. Let's just bring these 5 cronies in who've given politically. And now you see other Republicans suing other Republicans to do this. The enactment becomes very important. Who our governor is, who our legislators are, can become just as important, because if it's watered down in the Florida legislature, and if it's watered down in the Department of Health, we could have kind of a Charlotte's Web where we have to start filing suits to get them to do what the people wanted to begin with. So, I would suggest you look long and hard at the candidates and where they stand on this, and make your decision based on that.
We got another question back here. Good evening.
Is there going to be an anti television campaign? The anti-Amendment 2 people have had this huge campaign going on.
They are lucky, and I started running radio ads today. I told somebody I was up in a party in New York, not a party, a dinner at a guy's house last week. George Soros, who is a very benevolent billionaire and who shares our passion or my passion. And I told him, I said, I got out here and started this thing out. I got a trombone out, and I said, I'll start the parade. And I started marching down the parade with my marching hat on and my marching boots, and then I turned around halfway down Park Avenue, and there was nobody following me with the, so I've had to put in about $4 million of my own money in this thing and put in more. But yeah, I have a radio ad. I have 4 radio ads that are running on different radio stations. We have done different radio ads that we're launching down south. Ben doesn't think my accent will translate well down in Miami. He thinks I don't sound Spanish enough. Yeah, my radio ads are running real hard. I've got a television ad that I produced last week that we are getting ready to put on TV. It's called Tim, and it's a very powerful ad. If you go on my Facebook page, you can see the ad. And when you see the ad, do me a favor and pass it on to 5 other people and ask them to pass it on. But make no mistake about it, the people who don't want this are the people who make billions and billions and billions of dollars off of pharmaceuticals that poison. If if any of y'all happened to see a 60 Minutes last night on the pharmaceutical industry, it's outrageous what they do. They can charge anything. Drugs that cost, a copay that cost $100,000 here in America costs $12,000 in France. It is criminal. And it's basically, if you don't pay it, you die. This cancer drug Levi. And but they have so much money that the only thing that we can really hope for, we're never going to be able to match any money. All these people who go out and talk against me, who's paying them? How do they get there? This has all been on my nickel. We know whose nickel's, paying for them. So I don't know that we can do it dollar for dollar, but what we got to do is we got to hope that we have the truth and that we have each other and that we're going to vote and we're going to drag 4 or 5 other people kicking and screaming and get it done that way.
Another question here.
Well, you sort of answered, I was going to raise why the contradiction and the hypocrisy between, on the one hand, not allowing medical marijuana, and on the other hand, allowing all these extremely toxic, horrible drugs. And I have a terrible situation with my own mother who went from one day just being slightly anxious and depressed to practically overnight getting serotonin syndrome from all of the medications that were given to her in a rehab facility. And then, but we didn't know at the time what was going on, so took her to a hospital, and then there they loaded her up with all the drugs they were giving her, plus more, and she ended up with feet totally muscle contractions all over her body involuntarily, and went on for days, didn't sleep for days, things like that. And she ended up with permanent muscle contractions in her feet where she couldn't stand, walk, or even stand, and became a total invalid, can do pretty much nothing for herself, and it just happened like that. And they're just so free to give these drugs, even when family members to ask them.
My dad is, we had to take control of his situation. I mean, you go in on the weekend, one doctor comes and gives a set of drugs, and then there's a new set of doctors that come in, and then there's a night shift and a morning shift, and before you know it, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. My dad was on Ativan and everything else, and we walked in one day and he's like, reaching up, grabbing imaginary things out of the sky. I mean, he was a COPD patient. I mean, he had no business hallucinating. And that's when, Tim and I said enough's enough. I mean, we said, you gotta just throw these pills away. But it's the world we live in. I mean, look, there's a pill for everything. When most of us were little, we were able to go to kindergarten without Ritalin. We were able to go to high school and college without Adderall, which is basically synthetic cocaine. We were able to recover without OxyContin, which kills 16,000 people a year, hooks hundreds of thousands more. We were somehow able to recover from our injuries. But make no mistake about it, this drug industry, and if I had any money that I've made, a lot of it has been made suing these drug people. I have been inside their homes. I have been inside the makers of FinFed and Vioxx, and I can go do them one by one. And Tim, at one point in his life, which is true, it was prescribed 3 drugs that have now been recalled. What, Vioxx, Vioxx, Celebrex, all have been recalled. And all should never have been FDA approved. But they lie about the test, they go to Washington, they grease the skids, they got doctors who will say anything for a bowl of rice, and then it takes us to get into litigation years later after deaths and mayhem. And this industry, as is as evil, in my opinion, as the tobacco industry. because they knowingly hook you. If you've ever been on Prozac or any one of those drugs, try coming off of it. It's almost like a heroin withdrawal. They get you so hooked that it takes 3 to 4 weeks and you come out. And the reason they hook us is because that's how they make their billions. And so we just took control of my dad and said, we're not giving you anymore. We begged him to try the marijuana. He did die, but his last months were with dignity. Don't cuss.
Talking about the price of medication, when I had cancer in Pittsburgh, when I was leaving, they said, you gotta get this Maridol or whatever it was. And I said, okay, fine. And they said, well, your insurance won't cover it. And I said, that's okay, I'll just write a check and I'll send them a, just we'll get squared later. They wanted $3,500 a pill. I said, no thanks, they're gonna join your own.
So next question.
Hi there, this is a little bit different line. I have no medical insurance right now. I have had 2 back surgeries in the past 2 years and 6 procedures in between the two. I've been on a lot of medications, and going to what you just said about the medications, how the withdrawals can be in, like on heroin, I tried to ration out my medication knowing that I was going to lose my insurance. So the only reason why I take it at this point is so that I don't get ill or sick to my stomach, because it makes me very sick. But my actual question is, do you know whether or not you will have to have medical insurance to be covered to get medical marijuana when it does become legal? And if you do not have it, how difficult will it be in order to be able to get the medical marijuana?
I don't know how it's all going to work, but you got to remember we have federal laws that are in contrary to state laws. So insurance may be years down the road, but the way you're going to get it, first of all, we know it's going to be cheaper because you're not going to have, you know, the pharmaceutical companies are able to justify these outlandish charges for pills because they say they get all this research and development. We don't know what they have. But we know that in the free marketplace, growing marijuana is not expensive. And if it's done in a capitalistic way, I gotta tell you that it's going to be affordable where if you don't have insurance, you need to get Obamacare, by the way, if you don't have insurance. You can't get Obamacare?
I don't work, so I didn't qualify for it.
Okay. Well, it's going to be cheaper because we know what it costs to grow it. And we know that everything that pharmaceutical companies have is hidden behind a bunch of lies, research, development. And if the state allows this to be done in the free enterprise way, I think it'll be very affordable. A lot cheaper than it is now to have to buy it on the black market and worry about getting arrested every time you do it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I saw a TV show recently. It was the legislature debating with, like an open house thing, with all these people that want to be growers. And of course, like you said, there are only 5 growers, and they'll be chosen by lottery once they meet the benchmarks of the tests and everything. And the growers will want to know, well, how do we know what the THC level is going to be? And how do we determine that? And apparently there are 2 types of tests, the legislature said. And they yield different results as to the level of the quality that the growers have grown. If it's not up to that level, then they have to try again. If it's too high, they probably have to get rid of it, you know. So, but there are 2 different levels. One's higher, one's lower, depending on what the test is. And do we know
what that benchmark might be or how to determine?
Well, it even gets more sophisticated than that. When you get inside of people who've really been working with medical marijuana for years, there's all sorts of different strains for all sorts of different ailments. Look, one of the things they fight us with is they say this has never been FDA approved. Well, first of all, it never could be FDA approved, and here's why. In the 1940s, there was a movie called Reefer Madness. Reefer Madness stood for the proposition that a black man might seduce a white woman with some marijuana. They said, oh my God, we need to make sure we stop that right now. And marijuana then became a Schedule I drug. And then they said, well, let's try to make it even worse, because they called it cannabis. They said, you know, who else do we like to discriminate against? They said, well, the Mexicans, they call it marijuana. It was never called marijuana until Reefer Madness. And it became a Schedule I drug. And so therefore, we can't, they said there's no test. It's like a dog chasing his tail. They'll say, well, before we do this, before we rush to do this, let's have some FDA hearings and let's have some testing. Well, there can't be testing in America because it's a Schedule I drug. So we would just chase our tail into the 3,000s and 4,000s and, you know, until the year 25, if man is still alive, as the old song used to go. And so, but to your question, when you go to Canada, it's scientific. When you go to Israel, where they've been working on it for 50 years, it's scientific, and they have it down, different marijuana for Tim, different marijuana for the little girl with epilepsy, different marijuana for glaucoma. It is scientific, and once it becomes universal, it will become much more scientific. So, but what we've done here in Florida, we said we're going to let the guy out in Apopka, who's a specialist in Dracaena marginatas and rubber trees, be the expert. That will show you the perversion and the crookedness of Tallahassee in our political system.
John, we got a question here from Sam.
My question is, I have family that are caregivers, and they kind of unite on the table and I kind of overhear them talking. And I had a caregiver that in downtown got robbed, just trying to help with other patients. Now, they were talking about going to different seminars. I told them to wait. But what is your opinion on all these pop-up universities that tell you, hey, that we'll teach you how you...
I would tell you this, don't spend one dime. There's hucksters and crooks and get-rich people out there right now trying to sell a dream. There's a lot of people who would love to be in this business on all sorts of levels. But look, you go out to the University of Marijuana, this thing fails on November 4th. What do you got? You go out to the University of Marijuana, this fails, but the enactment is so perverted. So what I would tell all of you all is to hold your money. If you see a seminar, listen, I probably could say today, I'm going to take 20 new clients, $100,000, and 20 people would give me $100,000. Because somehow everybody thinks I'm going to be the guy doling out the licenses. I'm not. The money I could make fraudulently, and the people who've come to me, but hold your money, don't spend a thing, let it all shake out, because it's going to be very complicated. And by the way, lobbyists and law firms are now getting this. Every lobbyist firm in Tallahassee, every big law firm in the state, they're putting together marijuana practice areas in anticipation. So I would just say, Sam, wait.
Chris, right behind Sam has a question.
Hi. I don't have a question. I just kind of wanted to fill people in. On that note, I'm kind of opening a medical marijuana school in Orlando. But before you pass judgment, from Winter Park. Sorry, I don't speak very often. I'm from
These are winter parks, that means the school will be very expensive.
not Winter Park pricing. That's why I'm doing this, because these seminars are trying to rip everyone off. They have no idea what they're talking about. My school's going to be 16 hours a day. You're not going to have to sit all day, every day through classes. You can come and go as you please. But I've been a caregiver in Los Angeles for the past 10 years. So I've sold to a lot of people who are affected, and it's a very rewarding business. So when they started calling us drug dealers, this new slander campaign, I really took it to heart, because it is a very rewarding business, and we do help a lot of people, and there's not much money in it unless you do it on a very large scale. So I just wanted you to be able to put a face with these caregiver drug dealers. I grew up in this town. Very harmless, and I just want to help people make an honest living and you know, keep medical marijuana moving across the country, because it's helping a lot of people. So thank you for your time.
But I would still say, with all due respect, hold your money until we get this thing done, until it passes. First, baby steps.
Yeah, we have a question from Ron. Question, right?
I don't really have a question, but when I was in high school, I had to do a project. You know, I was in a business class. It was about the cannabis business, and I had looked up some information on how I would go about it because I wanted to be a grower. And one of my friends suggested I look up this movie called The Union, and it described reefer madness. And what made me want to, make a statement was because reefer madness, it was kind of like a slandering kind of, video. And at the same time, it said on this video that it kills your brain cells. And I just wanted to make sure that you guys would know about the Union. It says in the Union that they use these monkeys. They would take monkeys, and it said that if you give the monkeys one joint every 15 minutes for 3 hours, that they would start losing brain cells. But what they really did was, for 3 hours straight, they put gas masks over their mouths. And what that did was it would suffocate them, and that would kill their brain cells because obviously you're not getting oxygen. So that's a myth that was like reversed for me, and it started making me look at it very differently. Because when I was in high school, I was straightforward. I didn't smoke, I didn't do any of that. And then I watched this, and it made me go forward, and I looked more into it. So that's why I wanted to be in the cannabis business, and that's why I'm here right now. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Well, if you all have monkeys at home.
I believe this young lady in front had a question.
Hi, I'm Anna Bodo. Going back to the 5 nurseries in the state of Florida, the restrictions on that, the $5 million bond and the $150,000 license fee, what do you foresee to your knowledge as far as moving forward when the law passes, if and when, as far as restrictions and the licensing fees and things of that nature? Are they going to be that harsh?
Well, I think listen, whenever you have this kind of money at stake, you're going to have cronyism and you're going to have politics. But what you're finding now is you have law firms who have traditionally supported this administration, but they've got clients who are growers who are going, and now you have them suing the state. And so you're going to have litigation over it. I mean, I consider myself a fairly liberal Democrat, but I also consider myself a real capitalist. I mean, I have other businesses. I don't know if y'all ever been to the Upside Down House Wonderworks. I got those all over the country, and I have Marriott hotels and shopping centers and offices, and I'm a capitalist. But I believe that capitalism works best when there's competition for pricing, for product, for reliability. And I find it interesting that the way they've enacted it is to take away competition, to take away competency, to take away the best and the brightest, to be sort of anti-capitalist. So, because there's so much potential money at stake, I think it's going to be real messy in the beginning, and they may not go far enough. But who's our next governor is going to be very important, because that's going to determine the enactment. And the Libertarian and Charlie Chris support this. You know, Charlie is one of my law partners, so I know him well. And Governor Scott opposes this. Pam Bondi opposes this, and she's been a big thorn in my side on this whole thing. And George Sheldon supports it. So the enactment can be and will be just as important as the passage itself.
I've lost the thread a little bit of the order in which people were raising their hands, so I'm sorry if I'm getting you in a different order than you asked, to ask the question, but, okay.
I guess hearing some of the questions of the 5 nurseries, some of your senior parents, I feel compelled to talk today because I see a lot of more my age and up. I know we have older parents. My background is long-term care. I just recently left long-term care because it's made a focus more rehabilitative, which means a tremendous amount more medicine that is causing a lot of problems for our senior family members. So I urge you to talk to your parents. I have on my husband's side very strictly conservative Republican parents who had a really hard time with me for years having a conversation. There were a lot of judgments across the board, a lot of sitting at tables. I don't want to be on a list. I'm not in the pot, but I now work with hospice patients, and the quality of life that you get for end of life care, it's the difference between having a conversation with your dying relative versus watching them just sleep into passing. So I come to you, I won't use it because I need to work and we're a right to work state, but as a nurse I really, really want to see you guys have better control over your own ailments and a better relationship with your relatives as they pass and your loved ones as they pass. And certainly as they try to heal from things that they could get over if it weren't for the medications that are more obstacles in their way versus the conditions that they started with. And that's it. I don't really have a question, but I would like to say too, the CBD is not the be-all end-all. Please talk to your older family members that are watching the commercials. Well, they're going to do that. That's what Sanjay Gupta said. Things like Alzheimer's, there's studies in Madrid that have been going on for years now. It's one of the few things, THC, that is actually showing reversals of Alzheimer's. There's nothing right now in the US that has been effective with treating dementia care and with Alzheimer's right now. So just please pass that on to your older voters, because I think they're going to make a big difference in November 4th for us.
I want to, just 1 second, is just say 2 things on what she said. Is while I told you all I lean more liberal Democrat, I happen to be married to a very conservative Republican. And people ask me all the time, they say, doesn't that bother you? Doesn't her politics bother you? And I say, yes, they do. As a matter of fact, I think she has canceled out almost every vote I've made in the last 20 years. I said, well, how can you stay married to someone like that? I said, have you ever seen her? She's very hot. I do, and then last night, after our grandson was born, I go to bed with my hot Republican wife, and I said to her before we went to sleep, I said, I never bargained to be married to a grandma. She said, don't worry about it, John. I never bargained to be married to a grandpa. So, but on this issue, this conservative Republican, who is no shrinking violet, believe me, is with me on this. This money that we're spending, she's quick to tell you, is half hers, and by her calculations, more than half. But she has thought about it, has been open-minded, and if we don't have the ultimate organs voting this way, we will lose. But the reason I believe that I have hope when we talk about hospice is our Senate president right now is a guy named Don Gates. He's a president of the Senate, and he confessed during this whole ordeal that we've been going through back and forth. And once upon a time, he made his fortune in hospice cares up in the Panhandle. And Don Gates told us during all this that in 1985, his Methodist minister and his best friend was dying. Now this is a guy who's in the hospice business, is in the end of life business. He knows what works, and he knows what doesn't work. And you know what Don Gates confessed that he did? He went out and he got, maybe he didn't buy it, but he hadn't bought marijuana for his friend, his minister. And he gave it to his friend, and his friend used it, and he found the first relief that he'd ever found. He died, but he died with dignity and he died with peace. And I thank Don Gates for telling that story, because I don't think he had to. Some people have asked me, why do you think he did it? I said maybe he was trying to subliminally tell people out there that this is okay. So thank you for your comments, they're right on.
My name is Kevin, and I don't have as much of a question, but more as an observation and something for y'all to do. Mr. Morgan mentioned earlier that we don't, the cost doesn't have the millions and millions that Sheldon Adelson and others are dumping into the No on 2 campaign. What Mr. Morgan did say is we have the truth. Now this is very important. The main figure, personality in this area, Central Florida, that has an adverse effect on Yes on 2, and this is a great man, Harris Rosen. You know Harris Rosen? Never heard of him?
Yeah.
Ever worked with him? He's a great man, very intelligent, very industrious, very compassionate and humanitarian. But he's concerned that International Drive is being full of hot shops if Yes on 2 is approved. He couldn't be more wrong. Gentleman from Los Angeles. Do you know of anyone, visitors, trying to go to a pot shop or a medical marijuana pharmacy in California? They can't get in. No ID card, no driver's license, no MM card, no entry. They have armed guards in front. You, as a tourist, cannot walk into a medical marijuana pharmacy in California or other states that have this for a look-see. They won't let you in. So his argument that my drive is be full of medical marijuana pharmacies is false. Tourists, visitors from out of state, out of the country, cannot walk into a medical marijuana pharmacy. Floridians visiting the area for the attractions, there's a good chance they might bring their own stash with them. Rents are so high in that area that if a businessman wants to set up a pharmacy in International Drive in that vicinity, he may go broke because he's not going to have walk-in people. I would rather get a root canal than go to International Drive for dinner. People aren't going to drive to International Drive to buy their weed. So his concerns are false, but he has great influence over his employees and the community in general, because he's very well respected, but he couldn't be more wrong on this issue.
Well, Harris Rosen is a great man and a good friend of mine. And look, everybody has a different reason, and almost all of them are ridiculous. Think about some of the things we've heard. Number one, that children can get medical marijuana without their parents. Now, think about that. Your kid has a medical issue. He's 12 years old. He gets on his bicycle. He goes to the doctor's office without mom or dad. The doctor doesn't ask, where's your mom or dad? He says, I'm just having some real serious issues, doctor. And the doctor says, here's your prescription for medical marijuana, which he then has to send to Tallahassee. Tallahassee had, those are the type of arguments. Harris Rosen says there are going to be medical marijuana dispensaries on I-Drive. I own WonderWorks on I-Drive at Point Orlando. 1 acre of land on I-Drive is $1 million. Raw dirt. They say we worry about the crime coming to I-Drive. This is something Harris doesn't want anybody to know, and I don't either. I-Drive is one of the most crime-ridden streets in Florida. You know why? Tourists get there, they think they're safe, they think they're in Disney, they think they're in Universal, they're not. Just Google crime scenes, International Drive. People are have money, they have valuables, they have cameras, they're from out of here. Crime is rampant on I-Drive. And look, some cities are going to ban medical marijuana dispensaries. Here we are in Winter Park, Florida. They had to move heaven and earth to put a hamburger joint on Park Avenue. And people are still pissed off about that.
They're mad at the 7-Eleven at Fairbanks.
They're still mad about the 7-Eleven at Fairbanks. I mean, when that 7-Eleven came, you would have thought that they had, you know, just it violated every commandment known to man. They're still not over the Wi-Fi burgers or whatever those things are called. And have vowed never, ever again to allow that to happen. But while on Park Avenue, if y'all ever walking down Park Avenue, you see this little shop at Lyman and Park Avenue called the Violet Clover. I would like to invite you all to walk in. There you're going to meet a real cute little blonde named Katie Morgan. Please do all your shopping at the Violet Clover at Park Avenue and Lyman.
All right, folks, we got about 4 or 5 other people that have raised their hands, and we don't want to extend ourselves too long, so please let's try to keep our participation sort of as brief as possible. Let's try to race through it so nobody goes away without asking your question.
Hi, good evening. I have a roofing company plant. If that turns off, I go through the roofing withdrawal. It wasn't until 3 weeks ago when I did better research on America. I keep saying America because it is. Until we watched this TV show, you know, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, they were taking marijuana in gummy bears. You think that's going to happen? The mother, Kim's mom, is taking it in gummy bears. You think that would work out better than smoking?
Well, Tim, first of all, they're not really gummy bears. Those are knockoffs. And people, law enforcement will show us gummy bears and that's this crunch. Those are not gummy bears. They use gummy bears to scare us like they're going to be selling medical marijuana gummy bears at the 7-Eleven on Fairbanks. That's not going to happen. But look, it works in all different forms. Tim smoked for many years, but now he uses chocolate. For some people, vapor works best. For some people, oil works best. For some people, butter, potion. So it's everything is available. Everything is possible. For Tim, it's chocolate. Another question? Good? Oh, hey.
Hi, Mr. Morgan. First of all, thank you so very much for all your efforts and everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
For my father and my grandmother who are now in heaven, hopefully, from cancer. My father was a user of medicinal marijuana and helped him get through everything. Just to touch something, I am a graduate of Oak Street University out of Oakland, California, with the founder Richard Lee, who is also debilitated in a wheelchair, who has founded it and has also started this process. I think everybody should go to school and learn about everything. But my question to you is, do you feel that in the state of Florida that we will decriminalize this at one point in time, like Maryland and all the other states are doing?
You know, I stay away from those questions because it does not cause no good. Everybody has had me with all these ulterior motives. All I'll tell you is this: the United States has 18 times more people in prison than the next closest country, which is China. We see ourselves as this very civilized nation. Our police have tanks. You go to the Netherlands, and the police are called peace officers and walk around with billy sticks. And so, you know, my issue is medical marijuana. And I have some strong feelings about a lot of things. If you give me a couple of Jack Daniels and splash, I'll start spilling my guts.
Another question over here.
Hi, thank you for putting on this event. And just in my opinion, whenever you're discussing this with someone or educating someone that doesn't know about this, gives it a lot more validity. And that is exactly what we're talking about, not weed or pot.
And before Reefer Madness, cannabis was sold on the shelf by Bristol Myers.
I'd like to ask, in your opinion, what we should say to someone who is not educated or possibly on the fence or doesn't know about this. I mean, I'm very much an advocate, and I've had many discussions and debates with people, and just wanted to hear.
You would just say, look, one thing we know for a fact is this works.
Google Charlotte's bad.
There's no ifs, ands, buts, it works. We know for a fact that one day it's going to happen. It's already happened in 23 states. We know if it doesn't pass, it's not going to happen in Florida for a long, long time, much longer than after I'm dead, because the pharmaceutical industries have a vested interest in us not passing. And what I tell people all the time, I said, listen, I got this dog named Emma, who we love dearly. And if Emma was in trouble, if Emma was in pain, I'd give her medical marijuana immediately. We would do this for our dogs. We would do this for our dogs. Yet we're having this debate about whether we do it for each other. Now some people say, well, our dogs love us more than each other. And I say, you know, you may be right. If you want to know who loves you the most, tonight when you go home, pull your 2 cars out in the driveway, open both of the trunks, put your spouse in one trunk and shut the trunk. Then put your dog in another trunk and shut the trunk. Go inside, wait for an hour. Come back out, open both trunks, watch how your spouse greets you, watch how your dog greets you. My kids have said, Daddy, you wouldn't be able to get Mom in the trunk. I mean, I couldn't get her in the damn trunk, so. I will do one more and we gotta go. Okay.
So, hi, I had a question I feel like a lot of people's opposition to the passing of medical marijuana is the fact that there's a lot of misinformation and improper facts about it. So I was wondering if you were if your campaigns, if you were going to do anything about the proper education about it. Because we have people calling it the devil's lettuce. So it's it kind of makes me think what do people know? It makes you
Well, look, and this will be my last answer for my wife's making beef stroganoff, so I gotta go home. Y'all wanna come to have some beef stroganoff? She can't cook too. Look, almost every argument they have made has been ridiculous. Their closing argument is caregivers are going to be drug dealers who are going to take the medical marijuana and go out and sell it to our children. Now think about that. And that's their closing argument. Think about that. I'm a drug dealer. So-and-so's dying. That person hires the drug dealer. The drug dealer then says, okay, I'll register with Tallahassee. And then I'm going to get the marijuana that I have to pay more money than I have to pay for down in Miami. Now, that's their best argument. They call them caregivers. I said, they're caregivers. They say it's going to get in the hands of our children. That's the same argument that people that fought gun control said, well, we can't have guns because the children will get them. You go to any medicine cabinet in Winter Park, and you'll find stuff way more toxic, way more dangerous. 12,000 people die a year from stuff like Advil and Tylenol. You know, who's locking up the Tylenol? Who's locking up the Advil? The arguments are false, and so they make up things like drug dealers are going to be caregivers, and our children are going to get their hands on the marijuana, and they pull at heartstrings, which is our children, and then they try to scare us with the stereotypical drug dealer. And it's the same hatred and racism and bigotry and meanness that's been going on since Reefer Madness. Look, at the end of the day, I think this is going to be very close because they got the campaign going on. There's people at home that really don't know, and they're going to be scared. And so what I want to ask you all to do is, I know you all are going to vote because you're here, you care enough to come. But I hope to God you go and talk to your elderly parents. I hope you get your friends and motivate them. This is an off-year election. They're counting on the enthusiasm being low and this not happening. But I'm counting on the truth, and I am counting on you. And so, before I go get my beef stroganoff, I want to thank you all for coming here tonight. And remember, power to the people.
Thank you. John Morgan, Tim Morgan, thank you also to Ed Bowman, our field team for putting together this great event, and thank you all. You know what to do. Vote yes on November 4th. Thank you.